All right, I think we are live. So hello, Facebook world, and welcome to the third installment of the Vermont Wild Kitchen. If you could give us a minute, we're just getting some links set out, and we will begin here shortly. We have a fun one prepared for everybody. We're really glad that everybody can join us. I know it's beautiful out, and hopefully this gives some inspiration for things that we can do together moving forward. All right, I'm gonna press send. Okay, well, so let's jump in right now. So again, hello to everybody and welcome to the Vermont Wild Kitchen. My name is Shane Rogers and I am working with the Vermont Farm to Plate Network. And I am very excited today because for our third episode of the Vermont Wild Kitchen, we are going to be diving in on some fresh caught fish tacos and some wild nettles. And with me today, I have Corey Hart from Vermont Fish and Wildlife, and I have Cheryl Herrick from Burlington. So Corey, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah. My name is Corey Hart. I'm an education specialist for fish and wildlife. Primarily, I do a lot of our aquatic education. So when things are normal, I'm leading fishing programs for the public in more hands-on settings. Now, due to the way the times are, we're doing a lot more Facebook Live type programs and educational videos for people. And tonight we'll be focusing on fish tacos. Cheryl,
awesome. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Corey and Shane. So I'm Cheryl Herrick, and I live in Burlington. Folks might know my name because I do work in the food system, too. In my day job, I work for UVM Extension at the Center for Sustainable Agriculture. But I'm just here as a cooking person and neighbor today. And one of the things I love in the spring is harvesting nettles. So I'm here to talk a little bit about that and show something we might do with them if you brave the patch.
Thanks, Cheryl and Corey. So for all those tuning in, again, we say thank you for tuning in. And, before we start, we want to give a big shout out to all of those people, again, who are working really hard to keep us healthy, keep us safe, and also to keep us fed. We hope that, this short little program could give you some inspiration, especially since it's supposed to be beautiful out this weekend. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a short video where I went out and I actually talked to Cheryl and her friend Emma Schoenberg, and we talked about wild nettles. So I will get that queued up right now. All right. Enjoy.
Well, I'm Cheryl Herrick, and I'm here at Burlington Co-Housing on the edge of our wild nettle patch.
Awesome.
I'm Emma with Food Not Bombs Burlington.
I contacted Emma through Food Not Bombs because we have so many nettles, and I love them as a spring green, and they're a weed, and they're abundant, and there's more than I can personally pick. So I wanted to connect them with Food Not Bombs and other people and do some, weed-related food access work here. So, anything you're doing with wild crafting, this kind of makes it like make sure that if you're on anybody's property or property that people might think is theirs, check with them first. And anything that you're going to eat the whole plant, especially like we are with the leaves of these, you want to know what else is going on that land because it can be polluted. And so anything that is in the ground could be in the plant. They are perennial, so you're going to find them where they were in the past. Except I note that they look like mint. So just like mint grows with this habit of paired leaves, and you kind of look down and you see like 4 leaves, 2 pairs at cross angles, at 90-degree angles, nettles has the same habit. I am wearing gloves because maybe we can get a shot that has these, a close-up of the hairs in here. And the hairs deliver just a mild irritant. So I wear gloves and boots and long sleeves when I'm picking nettles. To not get stung, but I almost always get stung. It's a mild rash. It's not pleasant, but it's not the worst thing either, and they're delicious. So I just pick from here. The leaves that are the part that we're going to eat tend to be like pretty high up on the stem. And Emma here has scissors. That's a great way. And I just am like a hand. Hands are my best tools person. My habit is to throw them in a colander. I give them a couple rinses, kind of forget about them during the day, and then later I'll go with gloves, pick the leaves off, and toss out the stems, and do the last step, which is blanching for 2 minutes, boiling water, and you shock it with cold water so you don't overcook your beautiful nettles, and then you do what you do.
Today we're hoping to make some nettle pesto to go on turkey sandwiches. This is for Food Not Bombs Burlington, which is a mutual aid organization that's been in Burlington for the last 2 years. So we're partnering with BTV Copwatch, and we're distributing basic supplies as well as about 200 meals a week.
And what does it mean to be able to collect wild edibles for a mutual aid project like this to you?
I mean, it's partially like we live in mutual aid with not just other human beings, but the natural world as well. This is an ecology of mutual care that we're trying to set up here, which means that we're going to care for the world. When we care for other people, we're going to be composting everything that we use, and we live as sustainably as possible. And when we bring foraged ingredients to people who are living in motel rooms right now, there's a connection that we can make there about the food that we're eating. And it's a plentiful, bountiful ingredient that most people see like a weed.
Here at Burlington Co-housing, we have a variety of needs and abilities and levels of income and ways of living, but we are always seeking ways to be more connected with community and to think about ways to disperse surplus. And this is a really beautiful way to do that. And I think, if I had one hope for this video, it would be just to tell people, like, we all can do this. We all can redistribute things that other people need that we may have and have little or no use for. So it's really exciting to be able to do this with Food Not Bombs and make this connection around like beautiful green growing things.
All right. I hope that worked. I know we saw a little bit of skipping. But it was really nice to be out there with Cheryl and to be able to share with her some of her experience that she has with wild nettles. And it was just, as always, when it comes to foraging, it's a wealth of knowledge to just go out with folks and to really have fun with it. And foraging in general is just a really nice way to spend time, especially when it comes to social distancing time and wanting to be safe. So without further ado, I am going to give you Cheryl, who is going to demonstrate how to now cook those wild nettles that we picked in the field.
So I've done a little bit magic of a cooking show approach here, and I've done some stuff behind the scenes, and while that video was playing, and that's the first time I saw the video, that was really fun, and it was a beautiful day. And something that we were thinking about is like the big barrier for nettles is probably twofold. One is like the idea of eating weeds at all is for some people a huge leap to make just in their minds. Maybe it's threefold. Then like, what is a nettle? How do I know it when I see it? But the big one is probably that they sting. And in fact, we even like put the warning in the name, right? So we've got stinging nettles. And I just wanted to demystify it a little bit. And you can see I've got gloves that are long on me. And I find that really the rubber gloves, the longer the better, are what works. I get stung almost every time I handle nettles. It's not that big a deal, but these are my best protections so far. Better than gardening gloves, which tend to be cloth, and those prickers will go right through that. And so I just wanted to show you, these are ones that I picked yesterday and I brought them inside. I don't think I'm getting a great focus on my laptop on that, but that's okay. We've done the identification. And so the stem is pretty inedible. It's even now it's still early in the season, but it's not that good. So what we do is we pick the leaves off. And what I have found is by mid to late May, even the little stem that's branching out from the main stem is pretty woody. It's not that pleasant to eat. So with gloves on, you just go and, sometimes when we do herbs, you can just kind of strip the stem. That doesn't work as well for my taste for nettles. So I'm doing more of a plucking of the leaves, and those go, I'm just dropping them. It's out of the range of the camera, but I'm dropping these onto a cutting board. I would normally just be dropping them into a colander. And while doing this, I have some water heating on the stove. And when I've got everything ready and really well rinsed, anything outside, right, it's gonna be pretty dirty, really well rinsed. And then I get them and I do a quick dunk in boiling water. 2 minutes is what I give it. There's a link in the recipe I shared with Shane that suggests 5 minutes, which is 3 minutes longer than what I do. That's fine. When I take it off, however long you cook them, take it off. I'm gonna run it in some cold water. Well, actually, if I position myself better, you won't see what's actually the number of dishes in my sink. And so once we do that, then they're ready to go. And for today, I'm going to do a nettle soup. And this is one I like because it does a few things. Other people like to make pesto with nettles, and that's probably the most common recipe I see on the internet. But getting to there, so we've done our blanching, and we brought it over to the sink, and we've put cold water on it. They're nice, and that stops the boiling from happening, stops them cooking. It'll keep them nice and green. And now I brought them over to a food processor, which I have, and I use a lot in the kitchen, but they're not that tough. You don't really have to puree it. I guess I'm lazy. So I'm going to puree these guys here just for, I don't know, maybe that's 15 seconds. And now what I have is some chopped nettles in here, and it would be totally fine to just do it with a knife on your cutting board. And also, you decide how pureed do you like your vegetables. Do you like a little bit to it? Once they're cooked, they're kind of like spinach in that there isn't too much to them. They're not tough like like kale or something might be. And what I've done here is I chopped up, while we were watching that video, I chopped up an onion, not too fine, little fine. I think in the recipe I said minced, which tends to mean pretty small. Again, lazy cook, I don't really chop things all that small. I got about half a large onion, one small onion chopped, and a couple cloves of garlic. It's starting to smell really good in here, so I'm gonna, that's like one of those cooking tips, right? Like when you can smell it, it's approaching done. So I've got that. I've got my pureed nettles. I'm just gonna stir it in. I can tell my pan is hot because I've got a nice sizzle coming off of that. When the cold-ish nettles went in, it gave me a nice indication. Is there, and one of these little tricks you hear when you're cooking is so I said the difference between good food and great food is that you season every step of the way with great food, and that keeps the flavors balanced. So I added just a little bit of salt there, and so now what I've got here is mixed onion, garlic, and nettles.
And when did you start cooking with nettles, Sharon? And Cheryl, why did why do you like it so much?
I think, gosh, I've been living here where I am up on the hill in Burlington. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and I think that partly I'm like kind of excited about free food on some level, and there's something that feels really I don't know, it's nice in a bunch of ways. You know, I love the connection with farms. I love the connection with the land, and yeah, there are just so many ways of interacting with food, and I think that yeah, I like to get outside. I like to know what I'm around, and like to. It's an interesting way to kind of plug into your natural environment and what's happening. And what I'm doing now is stirring in some leftover mashed potatoes. And I will admit that we don't often really have leftover mashed potatoes in my house. And these are planned over. They're fake leftovers here. And so I'm stirring this all in. And we're going to end up with a creamy potato and nettles soup. So it's using some what would potentially be a leftover food that might just get uneaten in the back of the fridge, and I'm taking advantage of or sharing in the wild harvest. I'm letting the potatoes and the nettles together with the onion and garlic come back to I want to hear a little sizzle. Let me know it's like really cooking. And I'm going to put in some milk, and I'm going to put in some broth, and that is going to be it for our soup. It's pretty easy once you.
So does your family like this? Was it any problem with your kids eating nettles or something coming from the ground that they didn't know about?
No, they're used to me, so they don't balk at wild food. I think. You know, and they're teenagers now, so they're pretty good with vegetables and pretty amenable to trying things. But I suspect that if kids eat green vegetables, they probably will eat nettles.
And what would you say to folks who maybe haven't gone out looking for nettles or this type of wild food before? What suggestions would you give to them if they're just first starting out and not sure what they're looking for?
Well, they have a fairly distinct shape in the leaf and the stem and the habit. So I would look for that. You know, we've got a whole wide internet of suggestions and, you know, some ways to tell lookalikes apart from, from what we're looking for. And they probably know someone. It seems like long before I did any foraging or wildcrafting, I had lots of friends who were going out after mushrooms or hikers who turned into foragers. So ask around.
Awesome. And is there anything else that you need to add to your soup?
I tend to like a thick soup. Let's see if I can tilt this in a way you can actually see the texture. This is pretty thick, and I like that. I'm going to put just a little bit of broth in it. I'm going to put a little bit more water, broth in it, and some. I'm going to give it a taste for salt. I tend to like a little hot pepper on things. I'm probably going to add that on, and I think it's going to be ready. It's kind of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that recipe. And it's such a nice one to have seemingly in the back of your pocket. It takes such a small amount of time, and I'm sure it just tastes delicious. I know we have already added it to some of the next things that we're going to be cooking in our house. And I do want to mention that for folks who are interested in getting involved with foraging and wildcrafting, it is a really, really fun hobby. But it is a hobby that does take some skill and some research. So if you are looking into it, I would definitely suggest spending some time poking around the Facebook pages. There's a great couple around here in Vermont, like Vermont Foragers, and get yourself a field guide and do some reading. And always, always, always remember that if you're not 100% sure, about what you're picking, please do not eat it, because that is what is going to lead to sickness and possibly death. And that is the last thing that we want. So while wildcrafting can be a really fun activity, also at the same time, you need to make sure that it's a really safe activity. And that also goes towards sustainability too. There's a lots of great wild edibles out there that taste delicious, but if you don't pick them sustainably, you want to make sure you're not going to be able to enjoy them for generations to come. Cheryl, did you have any other advice for aspiring foragers or seasoned hands out there?
I don't think so. Boy, that sustainability piece, I say, and permission, like with both the humans, and we think about the whole ecosystem that we're doing this in. I think you said it beautifully, Shane.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your recipe. And with that, there's really nothing that goes better with some wild nettles or some fresh forage food than also some wild game. So I am going to kick it over to Corey Hart, who is the fishing extraordinaire at Vermont Fish and Wildlife. And he's going to demonstrate to us how to process and cook up some fish tacos straight out of Lake Champlain. So, Corey, I'm going to unmute you now, and we're going to give it to you to go run with.
All right, I'm unmuted. Perfect.
Yep.
All right, so tonight we're going to be doing crappie tacos. So I have a mix of black and white crappie with me. We'll probably just cut up the black crappie tonight. So this is a black crappie right here. Crappie work really well for this type of application for flaying out and using it in fish sandwiches or tacos. So you get a really nice flay out of it. As you see, this is actually a smaller one. This white crappie, it's a little slimy just because it was sitting out. This white crappie is very large, so I can get a lot of meat off of this particular fish. For this demonstration, I'm going to focus primarily on showing you how to flay out your how to flay the crappie, how to cook it. So I've got some oil that's starting to heat up behind me. So if you see me duck out back, that's just because I'm turning down the oil. The actual taco portion, I'll show you that a little bit, but most of you already know how to make a taco and have your ingredients on and all that stuff. So we're focusing primarily on flaying the fish and how to pan fry it. So to get started, let me just move the camera so you can see what I'm doing. Perfect. So crappies can be found in a lot of different bodies of water in Vermont. They're very, very popular fish to go after. Basically, they fall into our panfish category, and that's a fish species that quite literally fits in a pan. So it's a fish that you flay out and cook up basically the way we're cooking it up tonight. So that's anything from bluegills, crappies, sunfish, perch, all of those fall into that category. Flaying can be, a lot of people are a little bit nervous with it when they're first getting started. That can seem like a very challenging technique, but it's really not. So all we're going to do when we first start is I'm going to make an incision right behind the gills. So right here, I'm going to cut down. And I'm going to cut until I feel bone, so until I feel spine. So basically, you're going about halfway through the fish. From there, I'm going to turn my fillet knife, and you want a good fillet knife. So a nice skinny knife is going to be your friend. A long, fat knife, and you're not going to be able to do this. So the skinnier knife, the better. And from there, I'm just going to angle my knife along the spine, all the way down to the back. And you don't have to cut in deep first. As you go, you can come back and you can slowly rake around the spine and work your way down. If I do one quick cut, then you might miss some meat. So it's best to do an incision and then slowly rake back. So to get started, all I'm going to do is cut. So I cut down, and you probably couldn't hear it on the computer, but when I was cutting, I actually heard when I hit that spine, or hit that backbone. And from there, I'm just going to turn the knife. You might have a hard time seeing just because my hand has to be on the fish to hold it, so I'll try to do it off the side. And now, all I'm doing is kind of raking it, just going right along that spine. And this dorsal fin right here kind of helps to guide you a little bit, because you know that spine is right underneath that dorsal right there. From that point, you're going to get to the back, or the tail of the fish. And about the time you reach the anal vent, which is over here, then you can actually put the knife through if you want, if you're feeling confident enough. You go out down to the tail. So now I've got just a tiny bit cut. I'll bring that to you so you can see. So I didn't actually cut in very far at all. So what I'm going to do now is take my knife and kind of rake down. I'm slowly opening that up. This helps it so that I'm not actually going to be losing much meat. So I'm taking it right to the bone. If you rush it, there's a chance you might lose some meat. But that's not a big deal when you're doing something like tacos, because if it comes out in chunks, it's not the end of the world. Most people chop up their meat anyway for this. But if you wanted full fillets, then it would be an issue. So all I'm doing now is just raking down. I'm going to cut around the top of the fish. Get down around that fin. All right. So then you can see the carcass of the fish on this one side. You can actually see where I wasn't great, and I missed a little bit of meat right here, but I can come back and get that and set that off to the side. This is my fillet, and obviously I'm not going to eat it with the skin on the end. So now what I'm going to do is, starting on the smaller end, that'll be the easiest. I'm just going to take my knife and slide it right underneath that fillet, all the way down. It's not a perfect fillet, but that's my fillet, so the skin's been removed from it. Once you do that, I'm just going to take off a little bit of that extra meat that I left behind. I'm going to get all of it. So now that I've done that side, take your fish, flip it over to the other side, and you're going to do the exact same thing. So remember, you start, make a cut right behind that gill. And once you start to do this a lot, an electric fillet knife is going to be your friend, and you'll be able to do it a lot quicker. But if you're just getting started, just a regular fillet knife is fine. There's no need to get fancy. So cut all the way down to the tail. Now come back up. Rake. So basically when I say rake, I'm just going up against the spine. I'm trying to get as much meat as possible. If I was doing this fast, so if I was doing up a bunch of these, I've done this enough times that I'd probably do it myself just in 1 or 2 swipes. But I want to make sure that you see exactly what I'm doing.
So Corey, for those who maybe haven't experienced the crappie fish, where generally do you go fishing for these type of fish, and what are you trying to do when you're out on the water?
Yeah, so basically you fish for them just like you would any other pan fish. They're really fun to fish for with small little jigs. You can get them with a worm. This time of year, you're going to have a lot of luck in about 10 to 15 feet of water right on the edge of a weed bed.
And I know I went out fishing last year for these with someone from your department, and there was like a very specific technique that we were using. Do you have any advice for those who maybe haven't been out fishing for them before?
Yeah, well, hold on. So if you're just getting started fishing, your best bet is going to be simply just going with a worm. You really can't beat it. Just about any fish out there is going to bite a worm. If you're targeting crappie specifically, bouncing a small jig off the bottom is a really good technique, especially if you do it right along the edge of a weed bed. That's going to be where those fish are hanging out. Because weeds are offering shelter. There's going to be minnows, other fish that are in there. So getting right on the edge of that weed bed is going to be one of the best spots for what you're doing. And as I was talking, to finish up that other fillet, I did cut it a little bit. That's what we have there, and that's perfect for our purposes for tonight. Shane, do you have any other questions in regards to that?
No, I think that covers it. I know when I was out there fishing for the first time for crappie, it was such a trip. We were on a boat, and your colleague had taken me out, and he had all the spots marked in southern Lake Champlain. So we were just cruising around and throwing the jig out there, and just, it was like pulling them out left and right. I think we caught something like 20 to 30 fish in a couple hours. And that, if you know anything about me, it's that I'm usually cursed when it comes to fishing. I mostly enjoy the outside. So
yeah, they're a lot of fun, particularly if you get into a school of them. So most likely what the two of you were doing were going around the lake and looking for the fish. And once you found and got one, you probably got a lot more in the same.
Yeah, definitely.
It's typically how crappie fishing goes. They're going to school right up. So if you get one, there's a whole pile of them. And they're really good, especially doing like a fish fry. Crappie is a really good fish for that type of thing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to cut up another fish. I did one earlier, so I have enough to do our fish taco demonstration that we're doing. And for those that know me, I cannot eat spicy. Let me change this so you can see my face. I don't eat spicy food at all. I can't do it. So you can do whatever sort of breading mixture you want. I really prefer, so there's like spicy, like Cajun ones out there that are really good. I like just a basic breading mixture. And then what I'm going to do is wash it with milk. So milk or an egg wash works really well. Let me get my cutting board out of the way. Put this back down so you can see what I'm doing. And all I'm going to do is just take your flag, put it in your wash, breading, set it aside. So as I'm talking, my oil behind me is actually heating. Oh, I mixed that one up. So my oil behind me is heating up. For the oil, I mean, you can use a fryer or anything like that, but just putting your oil in a skillet is going to work fine. I use about a little over ½ inch to an inch of oil. And with that, you want it to heat up to about 350 degrees. You see I keep turning behind me. It's because I'm watching it. I don't want it to heat up too much on me, then I'm going to have an issue. So you can keep an eye on it. Usually about medium heat's perfect, and you can turn it down if need be. When I toss these in, they're not going to last, or it's not going to take very long at all. You can see they're tiny little fillets, so it won't be long. And you want them to crisp up nicely.
So Corey, you're using milk, and I always was taught to use egg wash. Is there any difference, or is that just your personal preference?
I actually usually prefer milk, to be perfectly honest with you. I walked over to my fridge and did not have any eggs tonight. I went with milk. Milk works just as fine, but typically I would use egg. Or a lot of times, sometimes people do an egg and a milk wash as well. But milk will work fine for what we're doing.
And are you using any specific type of oil in there, or is it just anything that you had on hand?
Yeah, so I got, this is vegetable oil I've got. It's starting to heat up nicely behind me. Basically, any sort of frying oil is going to work fine. You just want to keep an eye on it as well, because if it heats up too much, then of course, I mean, you've got an issue.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than rancid oil smell in the kitchen after you leave your oil on for a little too long, right?
Oh, it's awful. Can you see it from here? Do you want me to move the camera?
We could see it a little bit, but if you move the camera, it would be nice to capture that sizzle and that fry.
Perfect. All right.
Cheryl, have you ever gone out? Do you go out fishing, or is that part of your wild repertoire or anything like that?
You know, I did as a kid. We used to go ocean fishing, and my grandparents lived on the Long Island Sound, and we used to go out fishing. And I'll tell you, watching Corey fillet that fish just brought me right back to standing on the porch at my grandparents' house in the summer, watching my grandmother, who was a wizard of filleting fish. And I don't think I knew that fish had bones in it until I ate in restaurants, because she was so good at it. So yeah, this is definitely right up my alley.
That's
the
amazing.
bones is actually a really good point you just made. So especially with the fish I was just flaying out, they do have some little pin bones over there. You might not have seen it, but I did cut around them. The smaller fish, actually, a lot of times those will cook right out. Depends on the fish. And you can make that call when you cut out your fillet. You'll see right away if you accidentally got some bones. And for what the type of technique we're doing right now, I mean, small little fillets are fine. So if you do mess up and you get some bones in there, feel free, just cut it out. It's not a big deal. If you were doing a different style of cooking and you wanted a big fillet, then of course it would matter. But for tonight's purpose, small little chunks, that's fine. It's a good way to learn. And as you start to cook more or do more filleting of your own, you're getting a lot better at it. So my oil is just about heated up to where I want. So I'll drop one piece in, see what it does. And you see that nice sizzle, so we're right around the right temp.
What does that smell like, Corey? I feel like we're missing
Oh,
out.
it smells wonderful. It really does. So now we'll just give it a couple minutes. It does not take long at all for this to crisp up. You see, I actually just had to turn my oil down a little bit because once it starts to heat up like that, it'll heat up very, very quick.
So what would you say is the number of fish the size that you caught that you would probably need to feed 3 to 4 people if you were looking to do a dinner?
Yeah, so tonight, what I'm cooking up right now, what you saw, that's only 2 fish. And that's enough to feed me. That's going to be my dinner tonight. So basically, you all are watching me cook my dinner. What's happening right now, because I'm, of course, going to eat the tacos. Depending on the size fish, let's say you're feeding 4 people, 10, 12 fish will be fine, depending on how big they are. Once you go fishing out more yourself, you'll get an idea based on how big the fillets are when you bring them back. So, of course, it depends on the species as well. Like a crappie's going to go a lot further than a perch would typically, depending on the size, of course. So I don't know if you can actually see it. We'll angle it down a little bit, bring the camera over. You see, those are actually browning up really nice. If not a little bit too much, so the oil might have actually been a little bit too hot initially when I put it in. But that's fine. So I'm just going to give it like another 30 seconds or so. Then I'm going to pull it out, and we'll get to plating our tacos and get on with the rest of it. I see in the comments they asked if it's a flour or a coating. It's mainly a flour coating, so it's what I use is actually a seafood mixture called Shore Lunch. And it's flour, it's got some seasonings, things like that in there. I don't usually use breadcrumb coatings when it comes to fish. You certainly could. One of the best ones I've actually found is a pancake mix. Works really well. It actually comes out very delicious.
And Corey, somebody asked if you would use lake trout for the tacos as well.
Hold on 1 second. Yeah, you could use Lakers with lake trout. Lakers are typically a very gamey, tasty fish. So frying them up would be a good way to, especially if you season them, that'll get rid of some of that flavor, or get that gaminess flavor to it. Let me shut them off. You can see, see if you can see them. These are browned up really nicely, so this is exactly what I was looking for. And with these, I'll be able to get probably 2 tacos or so out of them, which is absolutely perfect. Let me move the camera back over so you can see what I'm doing.
And Corey, I saw that coming up on June 13th is Free Fishing Day, right? So anybody without a license should be able to go out onto the water and give it a try for fishing out here in Vermont, right?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I have to grab something, and then I'll be right back.
Well, I know it's Free Fishing Day.
Sorry, I got distracted and had to grab a plate because you certainly don't want this to go cold. Not that it matters for you, but it does matter for me. Yes, Free Fishing Day is coming up, and on Free Fishing Day, anyone can fish for free without a license, but all fishing wildlife regulations still apply. If you're just getting started and you want to find a good location to go out fishing for crappie or learn some techniques, all of that information will be found right on our website.
Which I'm putting in the chat right now.
So for now, I mean, most of you already know how to make a taco. That's not new things to a lot of us, but just to show you what it's going to look like. So you got your fish, throw in any sort of things you want.
What are you adding on top of there?
Cream, cheese, salsa that if you want that. Cheese and a little bit of salsa.
So I grew up in the Midwest on Lake Erie, and perch tacos were literally everywhere. Everywhere that you would look, people were selling perch tacos, they were eating perch tacos. And I moved out here and you don't see them anywhere. And I feel like it's such an underutilized fish that just makes a delicious pan-fried anything that you want.
Well, the funny thing about it too is I eat a ridiculous amount of fish tacos, fish sandwiches, those type of things. We've got all this fish just swimming around. They can go out and catch it as long as you have a license. I, of course, way overfilled my fish taco as I was talking to you and trying to multitask. This just gives you an idea of what I made. So it's a soft taco, obviously. But you've got your nice fried fish in there with a batter. I don't like much spice, so I didn't put much salsa on there on top. But that's really all there is to it. Was there any questions about filleting them out? Any other questions like that?
No, there are no questions that came in, but I think it's interesting to note that from fish to taco, that took about 15 minutes. So it's really not a high barrier type of activity. And for those who may not be able to reference, I sat there with my first one and I was like looking at YouTube on my camera, just making sure that I got the fillet right because I wanted to eat that delicious food. So
well, that's the beauty of like when you're doing these fillets. It doesn't matter if you get tiny little pieces because tiny little pieces in the taco, who's going to be the wiser? So if it takes you a bit and you kind of butcher the fish in the process and make a mess, it's not a big deal as long as you get that meat off there somehow. Eventually, as you get more practice, you'll get a nice perfect fillet.
Yeah, and I really agree.
I took a couple bites, and it's very good.
Yeah, with the tiny pieces, I mean, one of the like great things about a taco is the crunchy parts inside the cocktail. And if you don't get tiny pieces, you're going to have less crunch, and that's just going to make you a little bit sad, even if you don't know it for sure. But better for the small pieces.
Because I was distracted talking with y'all, but usually, I would chop them up too. Even the bigger fillets, I think those would be a lot smaller. It's kind of in the pan, and we called it good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Corey, for sharing all that information. And I know I put into the chat some regulations for Vermont Fish and Wildlife, but there's tons of information on that website. And you can buy your licenses directly there if you're interested or you just have let yours lapse for, various reasons. And Cheryl, how's the soup looking? Is that going to be ready for dinner?
Oh, yeah. And like Corey, I just grabbed a hot pot with my bare hand after I did not sting myself with the nettles. So I just had it cooling till we were done, and there it is. It's a green and potato soup. It's not going to be the most beautiful supermodel food styling ready thing, but it's going to be great. And I'll say if we were in the same kitchen and I wanted to make some fish tacos, what I would have done is held some of those blanched nettles on the side. I tossed them with a little bit of oil and like lemon juice or a little bit of vinegar, just a little bit of acid to give a nice sour. And like any greens tossed with a little bit of oil, a little bit of salt, a little bit of acid. Great and like kind of traditional on tacos. Yeah.
I was also thinking nettle pesto as well for those fish tacos would have been really, really good. But maybe I just have pesto on the mind because all the spring greens are popping up. So I wanna thank Corey and Cheryl for joining us in the Vermont Wild Kitchen. And I really appreciate everybody who was able to tune in. And I saw someone jump in late, and if you weren't able to catch the whole episode, they do just load right back up on Facebook, and you can watch it from the very beginning. And you could hear all about the nettles and any of the filleting process that went with the fish. And I always have to make a plug here as the light dances in my eye. All of these wild foods just pair so perfectly with all of the great food that's starting to pop up in the fields that our food and agriculture workers are doing so much work to make sure is on our plate. So when you're out there fishing, or if you're out there foraging, pair that up with, some nice rooted in Vermont spring greens, or some bread and dairy, or anything along those lines. So with that, I am going to wish you all goodbye. And again, thank you so much, Corey and Cheryl. Do you guys have anything you want to depart with?
Well, I have to say hi, Mom. Thanks for watching. I see her in the Facebook comments. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
My only thing as we depart would be to get out there and do some fishing. We've actually seen a huge uptick in fishing license sales right now due to COVID. A lot of people are home looking for things to do, or you finally realize there is all this fish that's out there swimming around that can be caught for dinner. So we do have a lot more people out there fishing right now. If you're looking for a place to go fishing, you can find a list of all of our access areas right online. That's a really good spot to get started. There's also a link to family-friendly fishing locations as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. And I wish everybody a good night. And it's going to be beautiful this weekend. So please get out there and enjoy all of the beautifulness that Vermont has to offer. See ya, everybody.